The invasion began like a thunderclap across the stars. The Zarkith, Imperium Man, expansionist alien empire with a history of exterminating resistance, before it even began arrived in Earth's orbit with surgical precision. Their armada numbered in the hundreds: dreadnoughts, carrier barges, precision drop pods, and atmospheric burners. To them, Earth was a final pest to swat away before solidifying their hold on the outer fringe of the galaxy. The Imperium didn't expect trouble. They were veterans of hundreds of planetary campaigns. Their fleets had cracked the crystalline vaults of the Varnax. They had silenced the methane singers of Yethtor. Earth, by contrast, was barely post-warp, scattered politically, and bereft of true galactic allies. Humanity had no planetary shield, no formal fleet to speak of, and was still relying on orbital weapon systems designed for asteroid deflection. In short, the Zarkith expected a swift conquest, but they hesitated. Not out of fear, but confusion. Earth had been placed under a Class Omega restriction by the Galactic Council, meaning no interaction, no interference, no observation. That tag was normally reserved for unstable stars or ancient AI-haunted ruins. And yet, for centuries, Earth was left alone. Now that the tag had been mysteriously lifted, the Zarkith swooped in to claim the unguarded world. As their fleet broke into orbit, chaos ignited below. Nations scrambled jets into the sky in a show of defiance. Emergency broadcasts lit up every screen. Civilians flooded bunkers and basements while heads of state screamed into microphones demanding answers. No one, except for her. Dr. Thalia Miles stood beneath the ice. While the rest of the world panicked, she remained calm. In fact, she'd been waiting. She wasn't a general. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't even listed on any known military clearance logs. Talia was a theoretical physicist. One with multiple doctorates, a mind like a scalpel, and a reputation for being both brilliant and dangerously eccentric. 10 years ago, she had disappeared from public view, officially listed as on sabbatical. Unofficially, she'd been quietly funded by a shadowy coalition of Earth's most advanced scientific bodies and had taken residence in a clandestine Antarctic research facility. Her mission? To prove the unprovable, that the universe was a quantum-conscious system, that human thought could be harnessed to affect reality itself. In the frozen caverns beneath the Ross ice shelf, she constructed something no one else dared. Project Eidolon, quantum phase displacement reactor. Built not to destroy, but to reshape. As the Zarkith fleet aligned itself above Earth, Talia received the data feeds from global systems, military radars, atmospheric scans, heat signatures, particle anomalies. She didn't flinch. Her AI assistant chirped a warning. 17 minutes until full atmospheric breach. Planetary defeat probability, 99.94%. She sipped her tea. That gives me just enough time, she said. While soldiers loaded guns and leaders issued defiant speeches, Thalia pulled on a lab coat, adjusted her glasses, and walked to the reactor's central control module. Rows of equations ran along the screens. Her fingers danced across the interface, initiating the alignment of entangled consciousness nodes. To her, this wasn't an attack. It was an opportunity, finally she thought. An unscheduled variable. Perfect. As alien drop pods began to pierce Earth's atmosphere like molten needles, Thalia powered up the Eidolon array. The entire facility thrummed with potential. The laws of physics began to warp, just slightly, just enough. Instruments blinked erratically. The ice above moaned with unearthly resonance, and then it happened. Every single drop pod in Earth's sky dozens. Then hundreds froze in place, mid-air, motionless. Time no longer touched them. Gravity ignored them. They hung in the sky like suspended tears pulsing faintly, then vanished, not exploded, not destroyed, erased. On board the Zarkith command ship, confusion turned to horror. What they witnessed defied all understanding. Their scanners showed impossible data. Their war systems failed to function. Crew members reported seeing shapes that didn't make sense, and others claimed they could feel themselves being watched by something beyond reason. Meanwhile, in her cold subterranean lab, Thalia watched it all, and she smiled not in cruelty, but in awe. What began as an invasion had become an experiment, not on humans, but on the invaders themselves. She adjusted. A dial scribbled a note and whispered to the reactor, "Let's see how real they really are." The moment Dr. Thalia Miles activated Project Eidolon, reality shifted. Deep beneath Antarctica, the facility shuddered not from external impact, but from internal resonance. The reactor wasn't a weapon, but a concept engine designed to tap into the most elusive layers of the universe, the point where thought met form, where perception could override physics. The air itself grew thicker as the experiment unfolded, as though the entire planet was holding its breath. Above, Earth's skies had become a graveyard of alien ambitions. Zarkith drop pods, carrying shock troops bred for planetary conquest, had frozen mid-descent. From North America to the Indian Ocean, tens of thousands of pods hung in midair like dark ornaments. And then one by one, they began to vanish, not explode, not malfunction, not fall. They were unwritten from the fabric of reality, as if Earth's atmosphere had rejected their very existence. The first to notice were the planetary defense radars. They locked on to the incoming pods, only to watch the signatures blink out of existence with no trace. No heat, no kinetic fallout. Thalia monitored everything from her isolated lab. She stood in front of a wall of shifting data streams, her eyes darting from one screen to the next. The readings were confirming what she had only speculated before conscious observation. When properly amplified through a directed quantum field, could act like a force, not merely reactive, but selective. A conscious mind attuned to a certain frequency could act as a filter. The alien forces didn't match Earth's cognitive harmonics. And so, like a body rejecting a foreign virus, the planet itself channeled through her. Machine was ejecting them. Eidolon's effect was spreading faster than Thalia had anticipated. The entanglement nodes designed to synchronize with the global noospheric field, the sum of collective human consciousness, had reached critical entanglement. She was no longer the sole observer. Earth's fear billions of people, screaming, praying, imagining doom had fed into the system, but the system wasn't amplifying fear, it was filtering it. I underestimated the effect of global attention, she muttered. The projection field has expanded beyond the lab. Humanity's emotional bandwidth is co-authoring the field state. She looked at her scribbled notes, heart racing. The implications were staggering. She wasn't controlling Eidolon anymore. She had invited the rest of humanity into the Earth itself was beginning to react like a conscious entity. Meanwhile, aboard the Zarketh flagship, Vraksukor, High Commander of the invasion fleet, stared at the impossible. Every deck screen showed visual feeds from across Earth's skies. His pod armies were gone, not destroyed, not downed, simply removed. His command bridges were eerily quiet. The AI warrant faces failed to update. The battlefield data had gone blank. "Status," he barked. His officers exchanged panicked glances. "We're not receiving any transponder signals from the surface teams. Not even black box echoes. It's as if they never deployed. Impossible." Braxu slammed a fist on the command table. "Even total destruction leaves quantum debris. How does nothing remain, sir? ... The flagship's own sensors are degrading. We're losing the ability to perceive the planet." Braxu froze. "What do you mean losing the ability?" "It's not interference," another officer whispered. "It's like the data is being erased as we receive it." The Zarketh didn't believe in mysticism, but the readings were growing more surreal by the second. Starfields were shifting. Gravitational patterns near Earth were no longer behaving. According to known laws, shipboard AI began to shut down, able to process what it was seeing. Suddenly, a direct transmission from Earth pierced their network. No encryption, no warning. Just a clear human voice over a raw visual link. Dr. Thalia Miles. She appeared on their bridge screens, standing calmly beside a reactor humming with blue-white light. She wore her lab coat like armor, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "You're contaminating my field trial," she said, voice flat. "I kindly suggest you leave," Vraxu sneered. "You dare threaten the Zarketh Imperium?" She blinked once. "No, I'm not threatening you. I'm studying you." And the moment she said it, their ship trembled, not from impact, but from disagreement with reality. Bulkheads twisted into impossible angles. Lights flickered between colors not present on any electromagnetic spectrum. One of the officers convulsed. "She's watching us," he whispered. "The planet is watching us." Thalia ended the call. Back in her lab, she made a note. Observation creates consequence. The Zarka fail to harmonize with planetary observer network. They are not being destroyed, they are being decluttered. Then she adjusted a dial and watched another section of the orbiting fleet vanish like mist Earth had. Spoken not with missiles, but with Will and Thalia. The woman the world had forgotten had simply opened the door. Panic was not an emotion the Zarketh Imperium was familiar with. In their culture, fear was trained out at birth. Weakness was a genetic flaw purged by selective breeding. And yet, aboard their orbiting flagship, the massive dreadnought, Iltherin S, spine fear bloomed like a virus. The commanders had no word for what was happening. There was no term in their language for a loss of existence. But that was what they were witnessing. Squadrons of drop pods. Gone. Landing crafts with 1,000 soldiers apiece. Gone. The main carrier division on the planet-facing side. Of orbit? Gone. Not destroyed. Not downed. Just absent from any data feed, like names erased from a ledger. Their presence had been scrubbed from existence, and it was spreading Z. Technicians screamed as monitors blinked and spiraled into recursive loops. Some devices displayed gibberish. Others refused to acknowledge Earth even existed. They tried to recalibrate long-range sensors, only for the instruments to display contradictory results. Was both present and absent, massive and minuscule, real and false. It wasn't interference. It was denial. Something no, someone had introduced an anti-coherence effect into the field. It was warping their perception of reality itself. High Commander Varaxakor stood at the edge of the command platform, mandibles clenched, eyes narrowed. The massive alien, easily 3 meters tall and clad in shimmering obsidian armor, had led 42 successful planetary invasions. He had never lost, till now. And this defeat wasn't coming by superior firepower, it was coming through. Woman in a white coat holding a clipboard. Dr. Thalia. Miles, her sudden transmission had burned its way through Zarkoth communications. A raw, unshielded signal that bypassed every firewall. She had stared directly into their bridge from thousands of kilometers below and spoken, single damning truth. "You're contaminating my field trial." She had not spoken like a soldier, or a warlord, or a hero. She had spoken like a scientist irritated. That someone had interrupted her data collection. That's when Vraxu realized the terrifying possibility. She wasn't trying to fight them. She was trying to learn. And the Zarketh were merely variables in a test far beyond their understanding. Still, he tried to reassert control. All ships, he roared across the fleet's internal frequency, engage psychic dampeners. Disable all long-range visual sensors. Prepare to fireblind. If the act of observation itself was being used against them, then the Imperium would shut their eyes. Too late. The flagship's rear engine core folded in on itself, not exploded inverted. It vanished from space and left behind a spherical imprint in the void. It's like a fingerprint in gravity itself. The crew stared in disbelief. Then a new terror surfaced. One by one, Zarkoth officers began forgetting. Not panicking, forgetting. Reports were scrambled. Conversations fractured mid-sentence. Officers halted mid-command, staring at walls. Confused about why they were there or what their purpose was. High Commander, a trembling technician, said several of the bridge crew, "Don't remember the war. Don't remember us being here." Vraxu spun. "You mean they're compromised?" "No, sir. They're untouched. Their minds are clean. It's too clean, like someone edited them. Back to a time before we arrived." That was when the final realization hit him like a meteor. This wasn't a weapon. It was reality. Management Project Eidolon didn't destroy its targets. It altered the conditions under which they could be acknowledged. If something didn't conform to the baseline expectations of Earth's cognitive consensus, it was removed. Not violently, not maliciously, just ... methodically. And the longer the Zarketh remained in orbit, the more they diverged from what was acceptable in this revised version of reality. They weren't losing the war. They were being redacted. Desperate. Broxu initiated a direct hail to Earth one more time. A signal blared through the void again. Talia stood calmly in her lab, this time without goggles. Her eyes were lit with a strange glow, the byproduct of prolonged exposure to her own quantum field. Behind her, the Eidolon reactor pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating with forces no alien race had ever dared touch. "You're still here?" she asked. "Fascinating. You're more resilient than I projected," Vratsu spat. "What have you done to my fleet?" "I didn't do anything," she replied. "The field did. You don't belong here. And the longer you remain, the less. You exist, your noise, and I'm just ... cleaning the signal." "You're mad?" "No," she said, narrowing her eyes. "I'm curious." And with that, the call ended. The lights on the Zarketh flagship dimmed. The floor beneath Vrox's feet began to flicker, not physically, but conceptually. He could feel the idea of himself unraveling, far below, beneath the Ross ice shelf. The last human observing him calmly made a note in her journal. "Zarketh Commander exhibits exceptional stubbornness. Final phase imminent, awaiting confirmation of total cognitive drift. The war was over. Only one mind still watched, and she was writing history in real time. In the biting cold of Antarctica, beneath layers of glacial ice and steel, Dr. Thalia Miles stood at the heart of something utterly unique, a new kind of battlefield, one fought not with missiles or plasma cannons, but with perception, consciousness, and quantum fidelity. The Eidolon reactor pulsed steadily behind her, radiating soft bands of blue-white energy that distorted the very air around it. Monitors blinked erratically, not from malfunction, but because the information they were trying to display no longer fit into coherent physical form. Thalia had expected variables, chaos, entanglement, instability, maybe even a meltdown if pushed too hard. What she had not expected is that Earth itself would become a participant. Project Eidolon had originally been designed to test her long-standing hypothesis that a strong enough consciousness, paired with the right quantum field, manipulation could directly shape reality, not metaphorically. Literally, she had calibrated the machine to her own mind, tending to act as the sole conscious observer, her thoughts, her will. Her mental anchoring being the basis for what the system would allow or reject. But something changed. When the Zarketh fleet arrived and the world began to collectively focus its thoughts, its fear, anger, disbelief, defiance, those mental waves resonated with the Eidolon field. The reactor responded. It amplified. Now, the experiment wasn't running on her alone. It was synchronizing with the emotional and cognitive state of Earth's entire population. And that meant one thing. The planet was thinking back. Outside the lab, the world had gone silent, not from devastation, but from sudden, impossible calm. The weather system slowed. The auroras above the poles flickered like old film reels. Radio frequencies across the planet echoed with strange harmonic stones that matched. No known wavelength, but resonated with organic EEG rhythms. Migratory animals moved in perfect geometric patterns. Civilian witnesses reported seeing the stars shift places. It was as if nature had joined the equation, as if the laws of probability themselves were waiting on Thalia's next note. And the Zarketh, they were vanishing. Entire dreadnoughts blinked out of orbit like forgotten thoughts. Not even wreckage remained. Where once floated world breakers and cruisers, there was only silence and empty void. Her lab feeds showed what remained of the enemy fleet distorting at the edge of perception. Some ships were folding into recursive geometry, spiraling into themselves like visual paradoxes. Others were becoming translucent, fading from physical interaction as if they were dreams being forgotten. And those unlucky enough to remain partially coherent were caught in a constant loop of identity fragmentation. She observed one Zarkith cruiser as it flickered in and out of alignment with the space around it. The sensors tried to classify. It failed, then reclassified it as a non-event. That designation sent a thrill down her spine. It wasn't destruction, it was conceptual erasure. The Zarkith were not just being defeated, they were being rejected by Earth's new reality framework. Like a bad edit in a manuscript, they were being deleted from the story itself. Phenomenal, Leah whispered, scribbling a new set of equations on her pad. Observer consensus field has reached independent sustainability. Global attention, and emotional resonance feeding the primary stabilizer. It's not me anymore, it's us. She took a breath, stepped out of the lab, looked up through the reinforced viewport. The sky was unnaturally clear. Where once loomed alien ships, now shimmered only stars, yet even they looked sharper, more vivid, as if the universe itself had been re-rendered through a new lens. The human race had not fired a single shot. They hadn't needed to, because Earth didn't just defend itself with technology. It had used awareness, collective rejection, a unified cognitive immune system. Eidolon, through Thalia, had enabled it. But the true source of the reaction, the fuel, had been humanity itself. All of it. 7 billion minds, outraged, terrified, defiant, screaming into the quantum substrate of reality. No. And the universe had listened. The last known, Zarkith's signal blipped into her monitor for a heartbeat Vroxicor's final data burst. A desperate attempt to communicate, to record, to be remembered, but the signal collapsed on entry. No mass. No data, no sender. Gone. Thalia leaned against the console, stunned, not at the result, but at the implications. Theories she had once whispered in fear were now proven in full light. She hadn't built a weapon. She'd built a translator, a bridge between thought and reality. The invasion had been an unintended trigger. And now Earth had evolved, not biologically. Cognitively, she looked at the Eidolon reactor, still humming, still watching, and she whispered, "What else can we change?" End of part 4. The war that never happened ended with no victory parades, no ruins, and no enemy corpses, because there was no need. The Zarkith Imperium, one of the most feared powers in the galaxy, was simply ... gone. No wreckage, no survivors. No record, too. The rest of the galaxy, the silence was more terrifying than any weapon. It began with broken communication relays. Then entire colonies reported their Zarkath governors had vanished overnight. Drone fleets returned with incomplete logs places. Where Zarkith warships should have been were blank white voids in the data. Some systems tried to reboot their sensors, only to discover entire planetary networks had removed any mention of Zarkath's existence. It was like the galaxy had forgotten them, and those who remembered couldn't explain why others did. Rumors spiraled through every species, every starport, that the Imperium had angered something primal, that they had poked a hole in the fabric of meaning itself, that Earth had become something more than a planet. And at the center of every whisper, every theory, every terrified speculation was one name: Dr. Thalia Miles. But Earth said nothing. It issued no statement, sent no ambassadors, made no demands. The planet returned to calm, as if nothing had occurred. Its skies were peaceful, systems intact. Cities still bustled, unaware of how close they had come to annihilation, and how close they had come to something even stranger. Only one document ever came from Earth. A short, cryptic communique sent through old council back channels. No military encryption, no preamble. It's just a message, time-stamped precisely 32 hours after the Zarkith fleet vanished. We were conducting a localized scientific trial. Unexpected variables triggered containment. Results satisfactory. No elaboration. No follow-up. No return address. The galaxy shuddered. High councils convened emergency meetings. Entire universities were locked down for fear of ideological contamination. War strategists deleted their invasion models for Earth. Entire religions formed around what some were now calling the Thought War. And through it all, Thalia remained quiet. She stayed in her lab, her tea cooling, beside a stack of notes that had grown into towers of scribbled equations, diagrams, and reality phase readings. The Eidolon reactor still hummed behind her, now less a machine and more a presence. Synchronized not just with her, but with something greater, the planetary mind. She knew now it wasn't just her field. It was a feedback loop. Humanity, when unified in will, whether in terror, rage, or all, could shape the world around them. Eidolon had simply amplified that buried power, and it worked. But she also understood what that meant. Earth was no longer just a world, it was a participant. In the cosmic system, a self-aware node in the quantum web. She had become its first voice. For days, she ran test quiet ones, cautious. She examined how far the field extended. What boundaries could be pushed? What would happen if intent, belief, and emotion were aimed, not just reactive? What else could be changed? Outside, life resumed. The world leaders never mentioned her. Most didn't even know her name. Only a handful of officials tucked deep in Earth's black budget files truly understood what she had done. She received no medals, no thanks, no visitors. And that was how she liked it. Because while the galaxy scrambled to understand what had happened, Talia focused on what came next. Her latest notes were not about defense or warfare. They were about creation. What else could the Eidolon field rewrite? Could it stabilize climate systems, heal ecosystems, affect neurological disease? Could it reshape memory? Or perhaps permit humanity to evolve, not physically, but conceptually? She wasn't thinking in terms of years anymore, or even centuries. She was thinking in iterations. Then one morning, snow whipped across the ice shelf and clouds rolled in. She received a signal, not from Earth, not from the Council, it's from outside, a pulse in the far end of the quantum band. Something watching back? She paused, smiled faintly. She wrote in her log, "External observer confirmed. Unknown intent. Eidolon stabilizing. Beginning phase 2. Because deep down, Talia had always suspected something. That humanity had never truly been alone in the universe. But now for the first time, they weren't just noticed, or understood, and that understanding changed the rules. They came to conquer. She came to experiment.
Only one.
Only one walked away. But she didn't walk away with power. She walked away with knowledge. And that was always more dangerous. End of part 5.